Mary Orvis Marbury does nothing but wax poetic about the name of this fly, admitting that they, that is the Orvis Company, had no idea why it was called the Esmeralda, or neither did they know anything about its history. So I am tying it with claret thread because the head in the illustration that I am using has a red or claret head. I'm tying it on a number 6 sproat hook. The first thing I'm doing after putting the thread on the hook shank is wrapping a gold tag. So I have a piece of bicolor tinsel, and I'm using a extra small tinsel because I think it lays better around the bend of this sproat hook. So when I tie it in with a gold side towards the hook, and then as I wrap, I flip it so that the gold shows. And I'll just wrap down and back for the little gold tag, bring my thread back to where I caught that in. And now I am going to wrap over the tinsel all the way down the shank of the hook, because I want to keep the shank or the body as even as I can. I'm going to be dubbing it, but I don't want a large amount of material back here at the back. Makes dubbing the taper a little bit harder. Clip out the extra, and I have some green floss. Probably should have been a little bit more blue-green, but this is what I have. Again, I'm going to wrap it the entire length of the shank, right down to where the gold is. Bring my thread back up out of the way, and then wrap the secondary tag, which is this green. Maybe better would have been a blue-green, but I'll bring my thread back and wrap up over the top of that a few times right there, and then I am going to wrap down along the shank of the hook again, just to keep the hook shank even as much as I can. Right here where I'll be tying in the front hackle, and then I can clip out the extra, and then I'll bring my thread back down to where I have the green tag. The chart in J. Edson Leonard's Flies says that the body of this fly, Esmeralda, is gray wool. So that's what I'm going to do. I'll dub in some gray wool. And just keep adding wool to my thread. And try to get a slightly tapered body. Can do that by adding wraps or just putting a little bit thicker dub on the thread. And I want to go up about half the body. Right here I'm going to stop and take my thread up to the front again, and I'm going to tie in a brown hackle. This is a real short hackle, so it's about half of the length or the width of the gape. And I'll tie that in. I want to tie it in shiny side forward or out, so that when it wraps, those barbs will stand up and even turn backwards. And I'll clip out that butt end. And then I will continue to add dubbing until I get up to the front of the hook where the hackle, the front hackle and the wings will be tied in. I just wet my fingers. If dubbing wax makes it easier to dub, that's fine to use that, obviously, but I just wet my fingers and dub that on and then bring that thread up to the front. Then I'll take my hackle pliers and grab that hackle, and just 3 wraps is all I need here. Palmered in a spiral. And this really will get hidden by the other hackle. Okay. Sometimes that happens. Came loose from my pliers, so I'll do it again. I was pulling my thread back and pulled too tight with the pliers, and it came off the pliers. Alright. 3 wraps up over the top of that hackle to catch it in. And I can let go. I'll just pull it back and wrap under it. See if I can snap that stem out. Great, that works a lot better if I can snap that out. I'm going to use a brown hen hackle for the front hackle. I'm tearing everything off of that rachis down to where I have the length of hackles that I want. I'll go ahead and clip this stem now. I'll put my hackle pliers on the tip of this feather. Pull back on the barbs that will become the hackle. And I'll clip that. Create just a little triangle. Just big enough so that it will catch in. Something for the thread to grab onto. I'll wrap back because I want to leave plenty of room for the wings and the head. So this is a soft hackle, tying it in like a soft hackle. Very likely that the fly was fished wet. And when the book Favorite Flies in the Histories was published in 1892, the dry fly craze had not yet come to the eastern United States, or to the United States really. And they didn't have all the beautifully genetically modified rooster hackles either. So I'm pretty sure that Mary would have used a hen hackle. Go ahead and wrap over the stem to the rachis, and then I'll see if I can break that. It might be tender enough to do that if I can find just it. Yep. It's not going to snap, so I'll just go in there and try to clip it off real short. I'll just kind of split the top here. It'll give me space between the hackle on top to tie in the wing. I want the hackle kind of on both sides of the wing. For the wing, I am using this mottled turkey feather. Get a couple slips about the width of the gape. And I want the end of my wing to be pretty even with the bend of the hook. And I am tying this in with the rough edges, the raw edges up. I think that's pretty much the way it looks in the illustration. So I'll hold those two between the hackle, straight on top of the shank of the hook. Pinch that thread between my fingers, bring it down, and then up and pull up on it. And then try to get a couple wraps to secure that in. I'm okay with that. It is kind of splitting apart, but that's the nature of this particular feather. Now I'm going to use a razor blade to cut out the butt ends. And not cut my thread. That's the key here. But also get a clean eye. And I'll just take my thread and wrap from the eye back. I still have a little bit of feather there. See if I can get that nipped out of there. If not, it's not that critical. It's not covering the eye. It just looks prettier if it's not there. Get that wing to marry back together. The hooks that Mary used did not have eyes. They were called blind hooks. And she tied on gut, which is the guts, the silk gland in the silk moth caterpillar that was dissected, stretched, twisted together into a cord. And it was either tied on right there as the eye, or more often in Mary's flies, it was tied on as a leader with the eye out in front of it. Try to get that hackle to sit properly. And then in a contemporary twist, I'm going to put a drop of diluted goop. Stick a needle in my jar, grab a drop, and drop that on the thread. That'll soak in and dry clear. And we have Esmeralda.